Hello, everyone. I'm Dave Thompson, Community Outreach Coordinator here at the Richmond Center for Disability, talking to you from our new computer lab here at our new location. So it is National Accessibility Week here throughout the country, and we always try to celebrate it. And this year, the theme is accessibility within reach. So I think they're really sort of focusing on how close are we to, full accessibility on almost everything. Is there still some barriers? So I really like that theme. I think it's pretty cool. There's lots of things you can do with it. So what we're doing is we're focusing on what types of activities you can do. We know of a lot that we've worked with over the years, and that's what we're focusing on today, is the ones that are pretty established in the community. You can find them fairly easy if you're looking, and we're going to give you the ways to do that. And that's what we're talking about today. Then on Thursday, we're going to have a panel of people from the RCD staff, and we're going to discuss some of these same activities. Maybe some ones that are a little bit more out there, a little less known, things that might people go, oh gosh, I didn't know you could do that, sort of thing. And that's called Have You Tried? ? And with that, we're also going to get into that theme a little closer and see how close we are to, almost anything we can do. There's an accessible sort of component to it. And then on Saturday, we're going to be doing my gadgets, gizmos, and doohickeys. And sort of that focus connects there to the theme in the fact of how can you use adaptive equipment to maybe get you to that new, increase. Maybe you use an adaptive tool and that increases your stamina, and then you can do a new activity later on. So that's how the connection's going this week. And so unfortunately, our usual friend from the Disability Foundation, Eric Mollendijk, is not able to be here this week. It's been crazy with the move, and there's been some other issues, so you're stuck with me. And so we're going to talk about, to start with, is what the Disability Foundation does. We usually, every spring, Eric comes and tells us about all these really established programs, and I'm going to go through them sort of one at a time quickly, and we'll have some information pop up on the screen, and you can sort of say, hey, wow, I didn't know that was there or that was available. And so we'll start with that. So the Disability Foundation, started by Sam Sullivan, the old mayor of Vancouver, has a whole bunch of organizations under their sort of umbrella. And the most important ones for activity, the first one is, let's say, the Tetra Society. And the Tetra Society is a group of tinkerers and old engineers and volunteers that have a workshop at GF Strong, the rehab center in Vancouver. And they make things for people that need them, that can't find them in the manufactured world. So if there's an adaptive equipment like a reacher or something for your wheelchair or something like that, that's standard. But if you've got something that just you don't know what's out there, they try to make it. So if you're looking at getting into an activity that you used to be able to do, let's say like if you had a disability with your hand and you were an archer or something, they could make you a little jig or something to pull back the bow. That sort of thing. You can't find that somewhere, you put a request into them and they'll go, yep, we've done that before. We even maybe have a template for it. We can make you something like that. I always tell the story of a lady I met who had thoracic outlet syndrome, which is a very painful shoulder condition. And she was a concert violinist in Russia, and she couldn't teach her son violin because she couldn't hold a violin anymore. So she had to teach him piano. But they made her a stand so she could hold her violin. And it's just not something you go into a store and go, can I have a violin stand, right? It's just not something that exists. So if you need something, you think you're going to need something like that for the activity that you want to do, that's who you should get a hold of, is the Tetra Society. And then an organization that I actually used to volunteer with is the Accessible Sailing Association. And that is exactly what it's saying. It's sailing. They have adapted boats, different classes now. A long time ago, they were a little bit different, but now they're very easy, much easier to get in. And they will take you sailing in off of Jericho Beach and into English Bay. And they do them throughout. The information will come up, but I believe they start fairly soon, if not already, and they go the whole summer and into September. And you can go down there for one of their days. I know that they use, because it's pretty popular, so they give you like an hour window. And they'll get you in the boat and get you out with an instructor if you need it. I used to volunteer there, and I used to go with a guy who was a very experienced sailor and then lost his eyesight later in life. So he basically just needed me to say, don't run into the big ship in English Bay. I didn't really have to teach him sailing. He already knew it. He just needed me for the eyes. And they have volunteers that will get you in the boats. And some people, from my experience, they are a little, if they're in a chair, depending on if they're a high quad or whatnot else, they get very nervous when they get transferred. It can be a sort of nerve-wracking thing, especially if it's people they don't know. But now they've reduced that transfer time. The boats that they used to have were highly work-intensive to get someone who was maybe a high quad into it. Now, some of them, you can just roll the whole wheelchair right into the stern, and then it gets locked down and you're ready to go. And they go to Jericho Beach. Jericho Beach is great because there's other programs that are offered there as well that we'll talk about. And it's a great place to just spend the day. If you get an hour in, what else? Maybe there's a cancellation, you hang around, maybe you can get another hour in. And they get you out on the water, and it's pretty cool. I have a friend who did it last year for the first time, and I remember seeing her picture. She just loved it. And I was actually giving her instructions over Facebook on sailing because she goes, I want to go again. So that's the Adaptive Sailing Association. And then one of the other most known ones is BC MOS, which stands for BC Mobility Sports. And that one has all kinds of different organizations within it or activities you can do. The big ones that they do is something called the Trail Rider. The Trail Rider is a machine that was invented by Sam Sullivan, I believe, or he was involved in it. And it is a big fat tire and then a wheelchair. And the big fat tire is underneath the wheelchair. And then there's like the old Roman days where you had to carry the gladiator on the 4 points, and you had the servants carrying you. That's basically what it is. There's 4 sort of harnesses on each corner, and you just have to get some really strong, healthy friends. And I have suggested for volunteer options for people who are training as Paralympians or are training and they really want to get some exercise and volunteer at the same time. That is the perfect way to do it, is to volunteer for BC MOS and the Trail Rider. And so you can book sessions. You can actually, they have more of them now than they have in years. So I think they have 4 or 5 now. So you can actually rent one too. And they have planned walks that they do. I know they do something down by the beach. They do certain ones that you can go on. And if you don't have people to bring along with you, they have volunteers that will take you on the hike. You can do, I don't know if you can do the whole Grouse Grind, but they have tried parts of it, or Cypress or whatnot else. And you get to experience the nature. You get to experience the hiking if that's something that you used to do. And it's a really group sort of fun activity. I've seen some of their pictures. It's great. So that's the Trail Rider. And now, if you want to do something a little bit different, maybe not as sort of sporty, if that's not your thing, the Disability Foundation also has Disabled Independent Gardeners Association. DIGA. Great name. I DIGA it. And DIGA has adapted gardening beds all over Vancouver. And incidentally, we here at Richmond Center for Disability work with a company called Urban Bounty, and we also have some of these adaptive And basically what they are is if it doesn't, it's built so that a wheelchair is more accessible, but also just if someone needs to sit down in a chair, maybe their knees are bad, all those sort of things that have maybe canceled out gardening from your life at some point. Because you see gardeners, they have to kneel down and they have pads and they have little, right? And that might be something that you can't do anymore. So you can roll right up, you can get a lawn chair or whatnot else, you can get right in there and garden. And they have gardens all over Vancouver. And they also do lots of, I think they have a seed bank that you can get seeds and stuff to do, plant. And they also do a lot of training and sort of information and knowledge sessions. So Digga is another great organization, especially if it's something a little less sporty and you still want to sort of get outside and grow something, right? And then one of the other organizations that is another interest that a lot of people have maybe is music, right? And if your disability or your barrier has sort of stopped that as a pursuit, then the Disability Foundation has an organization called VAMS, Vancouver Adapted Music Society. And VAMS has a full studio at GF Strong where they do recording. They have a whole bunch of instruments and a very supportive network. And you can go down there and say, hey, I know how to do this, but I can't play guitar anymore, or I can't play this anymore. And then, of course, they've probably worked with Tetra to get little stands and all that sort of other stuff. And they'll help you out to, maybe revisit or be able to play something that you used to play, and now you can play it in a different way. Or you can try something totally different. And again, they even, I don't know if they still do it, but they were even producing a song every year and launching it online and what else for fundraising. And so you can get involved in that. And they do a lot of sort of jam sessions and the whole, if you were from a music background and it's sort of been something that you've lost, it's a great way to get back into that. So that's VAMS, Vancouver Adapted Music Society. All right, so we have now, that's most of the stuff the Disability Foundation does. And there's some great programs, and we'll have the screens pop up. And those are some of the stuff that most people in the disability community kind of know about, right? So we're going to talk about a couple other things that maybe people don't know about. And a little less and a bigger spectrum. So there's an organization called Sportability, and Sportability supports some other sports other than the Disability Foundation, and they support the bocce, which is like lawn bowling, right? And that's a very popular sport with high quads and people that are disabled from maybe the neck down. And they have rigs that you can move your head and you can direct the ball, and then it rolls down a big, like a slide, like a water slide. And there's also, they do a 4-on-4 soccer, and they also do wheelchair soccer. And they have wheelchairs that they are motorized wheelchairs with a bit of something protruding out from their feet, and they're able to swing the wheelchair and sort of kick the soccer ball. So there's wheelchair soccer, and I think they do floor hockey as well. So that's if you have a power chair or you use a power chair, there's some Sportability has some great options for you. And they are always active. If you're a Richmond resident, they're very active at the Richmond Oval. As is BC Wheelchair Sports, and that's another organization that does mostly wheelchair basketball is their big thing, but they also do wheelchair tennis, they do wheelchair badminton, and they also are quite often seen at the Richmond Oval. And I also just found out today from someone there that they actually store some of their wheelchairs there, so you can get access to them. And because some of the chairs for some of the sports are different. Basketball has a slanted wheel and gives you a little bit more stability because you're reaching high and getting things and you don't want to flip over. So the basketball wheelchairs are very cut down for speed, and they have a slanted wheel. And then of course there's wheelchair rugby, and that has a whole different, that has a big, it's like Mad Max on there. They have a big welded front thing and they bang into people. So wheelchair rugby, but that's for people who are really, it's a wild sport. You have to kind of work yourself up to that one, right? Some other stuff, and then I'm going to sort of talk about why, what you want to do, or just when you're looking at an adaptive sport. So you've got SCIBC, so that's Spinal Cord Injury BC. They do adaptive, all kinds of things, and they can probably tell you about a lot of these other organizations. One that just has become quite popular lately is adaptive cycling or mountain biking, so hand cycling. So you're in a lower recumbent bike, me being a cyclist, so you're lower down, but you're actually using your hands. And they have some different ones. There's even ones that you're in a Superman position, and you're pretty low to the ground. And they are getting quite popular, and they're doing different try-it nights and things like that. And it's a great, if you get back on the, I know someone who has a hand cycle, and it's even attached to his wheelchair, and it's electric. So he doesn't always have to be, he can rest, but they have really advanced in that sort of thing. So cycling was something you used to do or something you'd like to do. There is a lot of great adaptations there. And I usually have most of the information up on that because I am a cyclist. Now, if you want to go, let's go to something a little bit more classy or into the arts. So there are lots of organizations if you want to pursue acting or theater. One in particular is called Real Wheels, and they are a theater company, and they, about 2 or 3 years ago, they actually started an academy for people who wanted to take up acting. So they have an academy, they run you right through there, you get all kinds of training, and now you really are seeing in the last, let's say 4 years, the increase in all kinds of people with different disabilities or abilities in standard commercials now. You'll see, someone with a chair. So there's opportunities there beyond just, let's say, an interest or an activity. So Real Wheels is the first one I would suggest you go to. There's another organization that a friend of mine started called Vocali. And if you have a sight issue or a low vision, Vocali will have someone sit beside you while you watch a theater, and they will describe it to you. Or they'll have a taped version of that they've sat down and described it, and you can listen to it while you are in the theater system. I had a father-in-law who was blind, and he tried that one time and he loved it. And so they you will, if you look up the theater productions and whatnot else, or you search for Vocali, they will say which ones they're covering, and they're always sort of looking for people to sort of help out. And I think that's a great, theater's not my thing, but I think if you've lost your sight and whatnot else, it's a great idea. I know that there's an organization that you can, if you just need someone to read something for you, it's Seeing Eye, and they'll just, you want a can of soup and you get the directions, you can just go read the directions for me on your phone, right? I have a friend who does accessible yoga. That's another one that you can see through SCIBC. She does wheelchair yoga. So those things are there. There is also one organization that we worked with many, many years ago when I first started here called Stand Up for Mental Health. So another very empowering thing for someone who may be injured or has a disability is standing up and telling jokes. It's probably, I used to work in a comedy club, and standing up doing that is probably one of the biggest fears that many, many people feel. It was never my thing. It's never bothered me. I've taught since I was 16 years old, but there's some people that it's just death. My wife, for one thing. So that can give you a lot of empowerment and really sort of help you, your mental health. Is they'll train you, they take you through training, and then you actually perform on stage. And it really is, you can just sort of see people brighten up. And my friends at Neil Squire organization have a lot of adaptations for you that are gamers. So if you like video games and whatnot else, there's all kinds of adaptations that Neil Squire has come up with using 3D printers to be able to get you to use the mouses. There's even one for Sip and Puff that you can bite down on or something like that. So if you were a gamer and you can't do that anymore, that's something that they have. So if you're looking, let's just think about if you're looking at an activity or whatnot else, depending on your disability, I'm going to try to keep this as wide ranging. I have a couple suggestions on what you should do. So if you're thinking, oh, I really want to do that, or I can't do this anymore, or whatnot else, you should do this first. So the first thing always, if you have a physical disability or something that you're on medications or anything like that, you want to talk to your doctor, your medical team first, before you start doing something. And you want to keep in contact with them while you're doing it, because you may need some adaptations. You may need to, take it a little slower, right? You don't jump off, you do a para hang gliding the first time, right? So you want to make sure that they're on board and that you're not causing yourself any extra injury or anything like that, because that's just really counterproductive, and you want to be smart about it. So the next thing I suggest is do a little bit of a self-assessment, like a pros or con, have a whiteboard, piece of paper, and just write down those things that you really miss doing or that you'd really like to do again. And then think about the things that you would be happy doing in an adaptive way, because that's a mental thing that some people have to get past is, oh, if I can't do it the way I used to be able to do it, I don't want to do it. Right? So you got to consider that too. And if you can, just ask yourself that question, right? So are you happy with an adaptive version of this? And it may take you some time to sort of, try it out and get to that point. Of course, always assess your capabilities. What can you do? What can't you do? How long? Those are things that you can talk to your medical team about. Or another thing that I suggest at this stage is get your doctor to give you a referral to an OC Health, like a occupational therapist, because that's what they do. They basically are trying to get people back to activity or work or whatever, and they can do stuff like, okay, you can lift this much for this amount of time, and if you're not sure, it's a perfect, and it's good for if you're getting back to work or whatever, it's a perfect way to get a sort of a list of your boundaries, and then you can fit that activity into those boundaries, right? And then you want to look at new interests. What maybe since you've been disabled or whatnot else, what is something that you'd really like to try? A perfect example is I have a friend I used to work with whose son was born, I believe, had to have his feet amputated young because there was diabetes in the family. And his son has tried does running, has those carbon fiber runner, sprinter things. But he got into sledge hockey. So now my buddy plays sledge hockey. And he's tried it because he's helping his son and he wants to promote the sport. And he has people come out that are, fully mobile, but they have tried. And I would love it. I really like the sport. I like the physics of it. But so you want to sort of say, hey, that would be kind of neat. Let's try it out. And then you want to check mainstream organizations. So like if you want to play tennis, you look at Tennis BC, and then a lot of times now, it never used to be because a lot of these sports weren't as popular, but now the mainstream organization is kind of co-promotes the para version of it. So you can usually find out information about the adaptive one at the same organization. So things like basketball, volleyball, that sort of stuff, they're all combined, especially those sort of mainstream sports. When you've completed that sort of process, make a list of what you're interested in, and then you can sort of check out some of the stuff that we've talked about here. And you can always also contact me here, Dave at rcdrichmond.org, and I can sort of point you in the right direction. And there's also a lot of stuff online. So I wanted to suggest a couple of things. So I just did this now. Two places. I haven't looked at this in a long time, but I did look at it a lot through COVID. A website called meetup.com. So just before I went on the air here, I plugged disability and Richmond, BC into the search, and came up with a list of activities, a meet and greet, conversations from Vancouver Autism Support Group. One of them, there's a bowling for neurodiversity. So you're bowling with, they call it bowling for the unique. There's vegan Toastmasters. So there's and the great thing about Meetup is you can pick the day, you can pick the type, you can a category, you can also sort by relevance, and you can sort by the distance away from you. So they're what do they call those, filters? So their filters are great, and you can plug all that stuff in, and up pops all these sort of events. And Vegan Toastmasters group, yeah. I don't know why public speaking has to be vegan, but very, very interesting. And I know Facebook also has Facebook groups as well. So if you're kind of at a loss and you want to just sort of play around with it, have fun searching stuff like that. And that can sort of get you to a place you can try something out. A lot of the times it's online at first, or you can kind of choose either way. And so like I said, this week we'll be doing on Thursday a more sit around, hey, I tried that, I did like it, I didn't like it sort of thing, because it's always good to talk to someone beforehand and sort of see if that sort of fits in with you. And also about, how close are we to some of the sports that we're going to kind of do like an A to Z kind of list, and bring up everything that you can think of that starts with B, and is there an adaptive version to that, and how close are we, because that's connected to how close they are to full access, like the theme. And then on Saturday we'll have the presentation, and this is a really fun presentation because I usually only do this on in person, and I had some students trying out all these things. They are mostly healthcare students. There were physiotherapists. There was I think a chiropractor trainer or whatever else. So they were and I just sort of filmed their instant reaction to it. So it's really neat. And this is where you can sort of develop that creativity to say, hey, I just need to adapt this and I can actually still play, right? A sport that we did here was called speed badminton, and you can play it in a wheelchair. It takes a little time, and it was adapted from badminton. So maybe there's just something that you need to adapt to your wheelchair or whatnot else, and you can play that sport. Years ago, we had an open gym here at a school here in Richmond, and we were going to play seated volleyball. But we had a lot of people that had vision challenges, and we were worried that a full-size standard volleyball might injure people. So we played with a beach ball. And at some point, if we were to have that development, maybe we would have gotten rid of the beach ball at some point, right? But it was a lot of fun. And so there is a bit of a, you do have to sort of accept these things because, and it's that whole, I always talk about the embarrassment factor. You got to sort of accept. But I just went on a cruise, and I told I couldn't keep up with my brother-in-law. He walks very fast. And I said, my wife was like, I'm so sad that you can't walk with us. I said, I can walk with you, but I have to do it the way I do it, right? That's the only way I can. And if you can adapt to that, then I can do it. And that takes some getting used to. I've had 25 years to sort of get around that, and that's, if not, then I go on to do another activity that's better for me. So please join us this week. Check us out. I do believe, just a little teaser, that we're trying to get a wheelchair basketball wheelchair at the center on Thursday, and so that you can maybe check that out, see what the difference is, and join us this week for celebrating access. Thanks very much.